You're now listening to an archive episode of Or So I Thought, back when the podcast went by a different name. I really hope you enjoy it, and please make sure to listen to our new stuff. So, after you're done here, just scroll up, pick a new episode, and press play. This week's topic, rejection. How to deal with it, how to use it in your favor, and how to get those mother lovers to ultimately say yes. A couple of months ago, I stumbled upon this YouTube clip of Barbara Corcoran. She's one of the expert investors in the show Shark Tank. She said this.
How do you view rejection, and how can you help other entrepreneurs view it in maybe a different light?
Let me tell you, rejection is the big kahuna in all entrepreneurship. Okay, show me somebody who could take a hit, and I'll show you a good entrepreneur. I don't know if I made that up, but I think I did.
This made a lot of sense, so I wanted to find out how much a part of art and business rejection really is.
One of the things I learned since I started this as a child, in the art world and cartooning in particular, you have to be really prepared to handle rejection. You are not going to sell to everyone you approach. In fact, it'll be a small number of the companies that will actually respond and want to use your work. And so you really have to get used to being turned down.
That's Steve Barr. He's a successful cartoonist who's produced a few popular franchises of drawing books for kids. A true pro, a 40-year veteran in the game. Here's another clip of the Barbara Corcoran interview I found on YouTube.
And you know what I found is the only difference between the superstars making the millions a year and the person's barely getting by? The only difference, not contacts, not how hard they work. Some people work just as hard and don't make any money, right? It's how long they feel sorry for themselves once they get hit. Right? Some people could take a hit and milk it for 2 weeks. They're at their desks, they look like they're working, but they're not working. Mentally, they're not there.
So how do we develop a mindset that allows us to keep fighting after we've been rejected? We all understand that having our work rejected or being rejected on a sales attempt is tough. What we need is to develop some sort of insulation against the inevitable no's that will come. Let's go back to Steve. He has some good advice for us.
It is a roller coaster ride. If you expect it to all be gentle, that would be the top 1% of the field that gets that opportunity. And you can't judge your own work by outside input. In other words, if a certain editor doesn't like your style or doesn't like the material you've created, you can't take that personally. Everybody has different tastes, so you have to create something that makes you happy, that you enjoy doing, and you'll find the right fit eventually. It takes persistence and just trying over and over again, and sometimes banging your head into a wall for a little bit and then going back to the drawing board. But I as a child, filled a 4-drawer file cabinet with rejection slips from some of the finest publishing houses and magazines in the country. And I used that as motivation. I wanted to prove them wrong, that my stuff had validity. And so I kept going and kept going. And normally when I got a rejection letter from somebody who had competition, I would immediately go to their competitor to show them that what they had lost.
So essentially, we can use part of our ugly human nature, the spiteful side, as a way to create a game where one's gain is another's loss. But there's something else we should keep in mind as well. This is Brian Durfee. We interviewed him last week, and he's an author of a fantasy book called The Forgetting Moon.
Getting rich, I mean, when I was a freelance illustrator, even in college, I was sending my portfolio out everywhere, and people were rejecting. I mean, even though I got jobs from Dungeons and Dragons and and Lucasfilm and stuff, even though I got some of those jobs, for every job I got, there was like 20 rejections. So I was used to it. And I didn't really care. I never took it personal. I don't think one of the things as I know is these art directors or these editors, you know, if they reject you, it's not personal. It's not like they're trying to be assholes. They're, you know, they genuinely love their job. They genuinely love art. They love books, and they're just looking for stuff that appeals to them. And, you know, if my stuff doesn't appeal to them, that's, you know, you don't take it personal. You just like, yeah, I can see how it can crush some people, but it just never crushed me.
So we hear again in this concept of it's not the right fit. A no isn't a no to you as a person. It just means it's not the right fit for what the buyer is looking for.
You know, I use the example of Dr. Seuss, whose first book was rejected 28 times. And then he bumped into an old school friend on the streets of New York who had just started working for a publisher, and all of a sudden his book sold.
And even if you're still getting rejected, not all rejections are the same.
You know, I was trying to hit all the beats that Stephen King was hitting. I was trying to hit all the beats that Dean Koontz would hit. I was trying to hit, you know, I was studying all these horror writers just to make sure that I was on the right path. And I thought I did a pretty good job. And so I submitted this horror novel. I queried like maybe 80 agents because I wanted to see. And so I sent all these mailers off to 80 agents, and I just got rejection after rejection after rejection. But a couple of the rejections came back with really positive feedback. And I was like, okay, I am not, you know, just wasting my time here. Actually, there's some people that think that there's something that I'm doing okay. They might not want to represent me and try to sell my book, but they actually wrote on there, hey, this is really a vivid story. I really enjoyed this. I just don't think it's for me. I mean, and that was encouraging. And it, you know, it was like, okay, I'm not wasting my time. I should keep pursuing this. I'm on the right track. All the work I did to study how Stephen King writes and to study how George R. R. Martin writes, it's all paying off. I'm on the right track.
So rejection is actually a good compass for your progress. To a struggling writer, even a rejection can be great news. This all makes me think of this show I used to watch, called Family Matters. Some of you might remember it. In it, Steve Urkel would make advances on his sweetheart, and she would always slap him. But on a few occasions, there was no slap. To Steve Urkel, this was great progress. In his famous words, "I'm wearing you down." And if all else fails, if you're still getting rejections, there's one last approach that can keep you going.
Well, coffee, lots of coffee. The more coffee you drink, the better the world appears to be.
So let's move on to find out what the ultimate level of this whole rejection business really is. The final frontier. Once we're done here, I'd like you to go on your computer and search the name rejection therapy. So about 7 years ago, this guy was terrified of all the rejections he'd been getting, in career, in love, in friendships. He was tired of it all. So he came up with this little game for himself. Instead of avoiding the rejection, he made this game where the objective was to get one rejection every single day. To be clear, it doesn't mean he would ask once a day. It means he had to get one rejection every single day. In his game, rejection equals success. He turned this into a profitable business where he sold books and cards on how to play the game and ideas on rejections. Essentially, he had made a breakthrough. He went from avoiding rejection to accepting rejection to relishing in rejection. And I think that's a great model for all of us to follow. Imagine running head on towards this fear. Imagine getting good at it. Think of how your life would change. And that's the breakthrough I would love to achieve one day. I once heard a smart business person say that it takes about 10 failed business attempts before having one successful one. Instead of being crushed by this news, imagine if we hurried up to fail 10 times, so that on the 11th we have our success. As Cam Adair says, out of our biggest rejections come our biggest sense of direction. You've been listening to Wits About You. You can find us on iTunes or at witsaboutyou.com. I am Alex Cespedes. Thank you for listening.